Welcome back to Season 8 of the Whole Horse Podcast. I'm your host, Alexa Linton, coming to you from Vancouver Island, Canada. Thank you all for your support and listening over the last 7 years and for your willingness to think outside the box about all things horses. This season, we'll continue to push the edges of our understanding of horses and what keeps them their healthiest and happiest with the help of some very special guests, including some of my most important personal mentors. So happy to have you back and along for the ride. Let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. We're here for the Whole Horse Podcast. It's season 8, and I love reaching out into my community and finding cool humans that I want to have conversations with, particularly those that I know will be open to geeking out with me and really diving into certain topics in a deeper way. And today is no exception. I'm really excited to be meeting for the first time and chatting with Allie Plauska, who runs Triple V Therapy up in Enderby, BC, which is up in the interior here. Welcome, Allie, to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Alexa. Hopefully we have no more technical difficulties.
Allie is a trained equine osteopathic practitioner, and when I saw that, I was like, I got to chat with her. I want to chat with her because you were trained at the Vlugen Institute, and I'm just I'm so curious about the work that you're doing and diving in. So can you tell us, Allie, in a nutshell, a little bit about your background and what took you into the field of equine osteopathy?
Yeah. So, oh gosh, where do I start? I've been pretty much horse crazy since I was 7 or 8. So most of my life, um, rode horses. Didn't get my own horse until my 20s, later in my 20s, but I always knew that I wanted to do something with horses. And my family thought that was a terrible idea. And they were hoping I was going to grow out of it.
I
It
know
was
all
going to be a
about
phase,
that.
right? Totally. Yeah, first generation horse person. And yeah, so I finished high school, did some online like University of Guelph courses on, their equine diploma courses. And then I came across Dave Collins'
Oh
equine
my
therapy course
goodness.
in Vernon.
Did you go
Yeah,
to
so
did you go to a
yeah,
school too? Oh my gosh. What year did you
so
go?
that was back in 2012.
Oh, I was a
Yeah, so I was one of the
2003 student at his school.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Hmm.
I was lucky that I was like one of
Yeah,
the
you
last
squeezed
classes
in.
before they retired. Yeah.
Oh,
So did that. That was like obviously like a mind-blowing, like I
yes.
knew pretty much nothing. I thought I knew something going in. I did not know anything. Um, so yeah, I did that and then worked kind of like part-time with horses, working other jobs too. Still not completely knowing kind of which direction I completely wanted to go in with horses, but I was still determined. Got a little bit into saddle fitting, like worked a little bit with Schlesa and did their um, equine like ergonomist training. Did a little bit of that, and then I realized that that wasn't my passion, and I did want to go back to body work and hopefully make that full time. And so I don't even know when I first came across like osteopathy work, especially for horses. I can't even remember. I'd heard about it a little bit, and I just the whole horse, the whole horse aspect just drew me in, right? The crave for more knowledge was just so strong, and um, and I was just basically online one day, and the Vlugen Institute came up, and I was like, just felt a pull, and I was like, this is crazy. Like they're in Texas, like this is just like not doable. Like what am I even doing? And so then I brought it up to my partner one day, and he was just like, well, why not? And I was like, what? Like you're supposed to like talk me out of this. What do you mean why not? And he's like, well, like we can make it happen. Like look into it more. And so like the next day I'm like looking at like what flights are going to cost and sending them an email. And yeah, so that was, yeah, that would have been, oh gosh, I think this September will be 4 years that I've been graduated. And so that would have been probably like 8 years ago now that I first,
Amazing.
yeah, that I kind of went that direction. So, and that was, yeah, again, like a life-changing experience. Like I'm so grateful to have had Dave Collins and like that education first, and that opened my eyes to really looking at things differently, obviously, in all the different aspects of bodywork and
I mean,
everything
he
else.
just covers so much ground in that, or did cover so much ground in that program. I just remember every weekend was like, oh my gosh, oh my God.
Right, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
so cool. And I think, yeah, I had my first horse as an adult. I had her when I started Bluegan, and so she was definitely like a big, um like my biggest teacher for sure. Like she
Hmm.
was a big part of it. She could have like her own podcast of like the different injuries and things that she's been through. And I swear, like every time I was learning something new in school, like she would come up with something to help teach me.
As they
Like
do. Yeah.
she's like, I'm gonna make sure that you know this stuff really well. I'm gonna keep hurting myself.
Oh no. What's your
Different
mare's
things.
name?
Rain,
Rain.
rain.
Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. She's my
Mm.
appendix. Yeah. So that's kind of, I guess, in a nutshell. So then I've been working. So I kind of worked like part time through school, like continuing to build like my client base, and then I went full time basically when I finished.
Amazing. Yeah, I got Diva actually this September that I started Dave's program, or the November. I started Dave's program in September and I got Diva came into my life in the November of that same year. And sort of same thing. It was like she was my greatest teacher along that journey. Yeah. So I
Totally.
totally get it.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She's definitely my hard horse, and yeah, she's super special. Taught me a lot.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Isn't it interesting how it all kind of parallels to when even when it's really frustrating, like, no, don't injure yourself again, or no, do we have to go through this?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was so funny. And my farrier too, who I'm so lucky to have, he did Dave's course a long time ago too, when he was in his
What's your
40s.
farrier's name?
Craig Nunn.
Oh yeah, Craig.
You
Yeah,
know Craig?
I know
Okay.
Craig. Yeah.
Yeah, so oh my gosh, it would be so like not funny. At the time it wasn't funny, but every time he'd come, he'd be like, "What now, Rain?" Like, what do you... And then I would see, and um, I would honestly try to get other people to work on her, right? Because I was like going
Mhm.
through school, and it's so hard to work on your own animals sometimes, right? And just like that connection, and always doubting myself. And yeah, like I'd be like, Craig, like, can you like, what do you think, or can you work on her? And he's like, he would muscle test, or and he'd be like, no, she wants you to to work with her. So I'd be forced to, yeah, put my new knowledge to use and try and figure out what was going on and all this stuff. But
Well,
yeah.
yeah. Thank you, Rain. Thank you, Rain, for your help. And hopefully she's more steady now.
Oh gosh, yeah, she's doing great. Honestly, like she turned 17 the other day, and she probably looks and feels like the best that she has, even with what her old injuries and whatnot, and a bit of arthritis, but she's doing really,
Awesome.
really well.
I
So
have a question for you, body worker to body worker, because I have the
yeah.
same thing working on my own crew. I do work on my own horses, but I'll often sort of, yeah, get other people in.
Hmm.
What what were the things that you did to kind of help yourself over that hump in terms of working on her on your own and like sort of staying neutral in that space?
I did a lot of like talking us through it. Remember,
Yeah.
like bringing like my notebook out to her and being like, okay, just bear with me. Like I'm gonna go through things like step by step. And yeah, I don't know, like a lot of like just like telling myself, like, put on your big girl panties and like,
Get your hands on.
um,
Yeah.
right. I think that was the biggest thing for me is just the mm, believing in my knowledge and that I could do it, right? Even though like I have a hard time learning new things, like I like to be good at things as soon as I learn them. And so learning to get, when you're getting your feel still, and especially for things like craniosacral and your palpation skills and things that take a long time to
Oh
develop,
yeah.
right? It's not like an overnight thing, obviously. So being patient with myself, I guess. And I mean, she's so good. Like she'll stand there forever to like basically to let me figure things out and what I'm doing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it's still a hard thing though. Like I still battle with that, like trusting in my knowledge and my hands and what I'm feeling.
yeah.
Yeah, it gets
Yeah.
easier, but it's still tricky sometimes.
I think the palpation journey is a lifelong one, honestly. Like as a
Yeah.
human osteopathic practitioner, I feel like it's just I'm always learning around presence and around, yeah, where am I at in the space? How am I being supportive? Like all those things are a constant
Hmm.
question mark. And I think they will be 20 years from now as well,
Oh,
which is not a bad thing necessarily. As a recovering perfectionist myself, it's a
right.
hard one to be in this like process where it just feels like, okay, like it's constantly opening up and changing, and I'm going to be honing and developing, getting better and shifting
Hmm.
forever, essentially. But I think it's also a part of what makes it cool.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like you're not the same practitioner that you were 5 years ago, kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's yeah, it's neat.
Well, keep trying to get Dave on the podcast. I'm going to keep at it.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. I
Dave,
would
if you're
love that.
listening, come on the podcast. Allie and I
Yes.
say, yeah,
Oh goodness.
totally.
Yeah. I'm so grateful for that. Yeah, and I think that that was really helpful too. Like just that was the beginning of like learning to trust my intuition and my
Yeah.
feel and to be grounded, like all that stuff, right? That I don't even
Yep.
think about anymore when I'm working, but it's such a huge part in everyday
Absolutely.
life. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious because I have my own version of this, but I'm so curious to because it sounds like our paths have been in some ways similar. What the intersection between, say, Dave's course, which is including all this sort of intuitive work, more energy medicine, all these sorts of pieces, and then osteopathy, which can be, I mean, a lot of people when they see us work are like, oh, it's magic. But truly, it's just really, really, really subtle palpation and a very strong sense of anatomy. And yes, there is some magic in there, of course. But for you, what
Yeah.
do you see as the intersection there? Like, how do they support each other, help each other, or like hinder each other even?
Mm, yeah. I don't know about hinder. And it was also, I don't know if it was maybe a good thing too that there was such like a bit of a time gap between the
Totally.
two schools too, maybe. I probably needed to mature and learn some more stuff before I went back to school anyways. Um, I would always hear Dave's voice in my head when I'm looking at something like don't look at this symptom, like look somewhere else in the body, like right? Like you
Yeah.
have to consider everything else. It's very rarely. And so that obviously one of the biggest things in osteopathy when we're, talking about terrain and how things come up and generally when a horse goes lame or something happens, like unless it's truly like an accident, something fluke, like stuff has been building for a while, likely, and you do need to look elsewhere because it's never a singular event, right?
Yeah.
So that was huge, like that theme throughout the whole, all the years of learning. Yeah, that stayed true, which is
Mm-hmm.
huge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's been cool to have like the other kind of modalities like in my pocket as needed. Like I definitely haven't used, like I haven't really dived as much into like the essential oils and the flower remedies and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's
Sure
nice to
is
have
nice
it
to
there
have
when
it,
I want to
hey?
go back. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I don't ever want to shim a saddle again, but
Right. Oh, yeah, I know. Saddle fitting is so tricky. Yeah. And I
we made
appreciate now having like other professionals I can refer to people to for all these different things.
totally, totally. I love that. I love that combination too. It's really fun to bring in, the other pieces into the work. And I think there's so much value in having a vast toolkit. I think that was what I really found with Dave as I left, and I was like, okay, like I've got a lot of things that I can work with here. And then to hone that in, really bring that down to something that, yeah, you specialize in is really
Hmm.
amazing. So speaking of more of osteopathy, I wanted to chat today about a few things that I'm curious about. One being scars, scar tissue, and one that we talked about at the beginning before we got on was this idea of hidden injuries and the toll that hidden injuries take. So I'd love to hear more for you with something like, say, scar tissue. And the biggest one that always jumps to mind, of course, is gelding scars. But that being
Hmm.
said, there is, I'm sure, lots of scars that you encounter on your when you're working with horses, whether they're past injuries. I saw this a lot with horses, where it's like a horse was caught in a fence or something happened that created scar tissue. What do you find with those injuries in terms of how they're impacting that horse and how a shift in them supports that horse?
Yeah, so there's definitely, like you said, like the varying types of scars. So especially the more hidden ones, like we call them, like known as gelding scars, right? More internal ones that, sometimes you might not even be aware of. Maybe if you're doing some upper level stuff that, you might feel like a little hitch when you're doing a certain movement a certain way. But some of these more, um, like the gelding scars, you might not really know or think about until you have like a practitioner out that might feel these certain patterns of restrictions, through the fascia and through the spine, and the pelvis and whatnot. And but then we can also have, like you said, like injuries, and we do come across that a lot too. Of even what seem like a might seem like a small scar, like on a hind leg, like from a fence injury, but that's why like an intake form and questions and knowing the history is so important because a lot of the times we go in and we can feel a pattern of restriction. So, like that fascia, um, all the way through the body, like let's say all along one side, like the left side. I saw like a
Mhm.
case the other day of a mare who had, I think, gotten a leg caught or I can't remember, tried to jump a fence and didn't quite make it or something, and basically like somersaulted and had a scar on her hip and her, I think her stifle. And yeah, and I mean, they, got her checked out and everything seemed okay and she healed. And now a few years later, and she's starting to do more with her and send her off to a trainer and things were okay. But then I go and look at her and, we have drastically reduced mobility in that stifle and the whole kind of um, like dorsal fascial chain on that side of that shoulder all the way up to her TMJ. And then I look at her teeth and that incisor on that left side is way off from the right side, and we've got a bit of like an incisor slant happening, and very, very much the one-sided pattern, and nothing else. Like as far as riding goes, like the mare hasn't done much, and she's not very old, and so I'm like, okay, this is this kind of all points back to this one injury that at the time didn't seem too bad, and she seems, she's sound right now. But it's something to, if we need to start unraveling that so that the body's not permanently in that compensation pattern and putting excess strain, on that hip and stifle, and she's gonna be feeling pretty crooked, I would think, when you start doing more with her if we don't get on top of it. So yeah, and I've seen some other interesting ones like scars on the back from, I even saw a horse with like a had been attacked by a cougar. Actually, the horse
Mm.
had lived on the island previously and then now is not on the island, but
Yep.
had this massive scar like around the neck and the sternum. And it's just amazing, like feeling like that fascial pull that is holding. And sometimes, I mean, you can't do maybe make like a huge change sometimes, right? Especially depending on how long it's been and how old the horse is and that kind of thing. And it's interesting too, and I think you've probably come across this a lot, but like the emotions that the scars can
I was
hold as
gonna
well,
say,
and
so
like
like with
that
that one,
component of it, and
oh
especially the
boy.
traumatic injuries. Yeah.
I've worked on a mare with a cougar scar before, and it was so impactful. Not just the scar, which was also very. It was on her. I can't remember what side, but sort of in the area of like middle gluteal, like over the hip. But the emotional impact was what was most noticeable with that, because of course she didn't want anybody riding her. She was very anything coming up and over her body was like nope.
Right. Yeah.
With
Understandably.
with that scar, I kind of wish now that I had the skills I have now then, to be able
Right.
to support her to unwind some of that tissue in there. But yeah,
Hmm.
even today I think of that mare, and what that held. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super interesting. But I do love, having the different kind of tools in the toolkit to know kind of, especially if the horse is, if there's a lot of emotion there or defensiveness, guardedness, like it's cool having different ways you can kind of come at it and okay, it's like where do you want to start? And I remember like our one of our teachers that did a lot of the craniosacral work with us, he, talked about like if you have a really difficult case, you can like take your pulse and walk around the horse and wait and see like where does your pulse slow, and that's maybe where you
Wow.
should start. And so like,
So
that's one thing that
interesting.
I remember and sometimes do or just yeah.
I often do something called the menu of the day in our practice. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but I'll get on the sphenoid
Mhm.
and I'll just palpate, to see if there's movement. And if there's not, I will ask the sphenoid, what will help you move? And it's really, really cool because usually it's bigger vitality stuff. And
Mhm.
but it's not always in the cranium, it can be out in the body. But I found that a really interesting kind of like it's a very cool helper for me in terms of
Mhm.
like what brings the fullest expression of health, what you know opens up the pathways. And I love that the pulse, because it's like the rule of the artery, right? Like it's like,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, the artery is vital in these places, not so much here. Amplitude's lower, it slows down. Mm,
Yeah, then of course, yeah, muscle testing and coming at it from that angle too, right? Like where's the best place to start? I mean, usually I don't even have to do that. I kind of just hone in usually,
totally.
right? You just kind of know where to start, where you're gonna
Well, I
have the
always
most
remember
success.
Dave saying that applied kinesiology is like more of an affirmation for your intuition, So
Exactly.
it was
Yes,
like,
yes.
oh, after a while, okay, yeah, those yeses and nos, just those senses
Yeah.
just get really, really dialed in. And then it's like, okay, yeah, I know where to start. I know where to begin.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't easy at first, but yeah, now yeah, I don't really have to think about
Yeah.
it.
And with the hidden injuries piece, this is a really interesting one for me because I think it's very, very common, especially for horses, in that a lot of us meet our horses down their path a little bit, right? So it's like they may have, however many years they may have been with someone else with all sorts of question marks around. It's very rare to have someone sell you a horse that knows their exact history and where they came from,
Totally.
how they were born, all the things, right? And so I'm sure that you happen upon a lot of horses where you find surprises, shall we say, or things that the owner forgot to share or didn't think were critical,
Hmm.
to the case. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I always say to people that actually do have or know the full history of their horses, whether it's because they're the only owner or because, they knew the person before that had the horse or whatnot. Like it's always, I'm like, yeah, you're so lucky to know
Yeah.
um, exactly what has gone on in the past. But a big one that I see is anything surrounding the head, the pole. Um, so whether that's just various pullbacks or um, hitting their head, maybe trailer loading issues, or, once in a while we get the ones that have, oh yeah, they flipped over or fell over, and sometimes it's obvious, like they'll have like they broke their withers, for example, but I'm like, okay, well, they're actually, there was at least some whiplash or, they must have hit their head too, right? And So I do find a lot of the horses that have a really difficult time accepting touch around their pole even in the first place. Like there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of trauma there. Um, and I think I really try and tell people too that even if it doesn't seem like a major setback or something, when they pull back on their halter or something, like the tissue, it gets so delicate. Like there's not a whole lot there protecting the spinal cord. It's such a delicate area and such an important area too, obviously, for the rest of the body and function with everything, right? That it's so important to try to avoid these kinds of things in the first place if we can, in regards to tying and just general safety. And then B, hopefully having a practitioner that you can call if something does happen, because it's so much easier to sort it out when it's sort of fresh
Soon.
still,
Yeah.
right? Sooner
Mm-hmm.
rather than later before we have all these compensation patterns kind of
Yep.
building up.
Yeah, and I think I imagine in when it comes to osteopathy for horses, it's a key area of work. Like for us, we had a whole course on C0, C1, C2, an entire course because it's so critical in terms of our
Mm-hmm.
whole body expression and function, right? Like there is so much going on in that one little zone.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Hmm.
yep. And the relation to the jaw and we call like the occiput, like your primary chewing mechanism, we call is actually your pole, not just your TMJ, right? Like if we don't have the pole right or we don't have the TMJ right, like nothing else is gonna hold,
Yeah. And then
basically,
we
right?
have that lovely temporal bone that I don't know if they call it
Yeah,
the same, but like the great problem solver, the great troublemaker. It's like the bevels being on the outside of
yeah.
everything. It can
Or like
be,
I think they called them the evil sisters
yeah,
or something like that, right? And then the hyoid was like the governor. Yeah, so it's
yeah.
yeah, there's a whole lot that can happen just in the head, right? So it's
And that's just
not
bones,
yeah, just
right?
bones, not talking about like more cranial nerves and that kind of thing. But
Arteries, veins. Yeah. All the things
yeah,
through there,
so it's
right?
definitely not uncommon to be doing a lot of work if we can, just in the head.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah. So
For
that's huge.
sure.
I think hidden injuries, it's on its own. Yeah, it's if you are thinking that maybe something was not, it's I think it's pretty common for people to be like, oh yeah, like this happened, but then they walked away fine afterwards or they trotted away fine, and I'm
Yep.
like, they're really good at showing or not showing things, right? Like that's how they survive is
Absolutely.
to not
Yeah.
show discomfort or, they compensate very, very well. So it's kind of on us, I think, to make sure they're actually okay.
Big time. Yeah. And I know how I feel when I fall, especially now, 45. Like I don't bounce so much.
Right.
And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, with horses, I mean, when I was five, different, but yeah, it's, when we see a horse bail in a field or have a fall, yeah, I think it's sort of really important. I say this to my human clients, it's like, if you have something happen like that, come in. Come
Yeah.
in and get
Yeah.
a
Don't wait.
treatment,
Yeah.
right?
Totally.
Because like more than likely you've got a shock imprint going on. There's some things that are happening that need support so that yeah, the body doesn't sort of end up in a compensation pattern that we don't want. Yeah. Yeah, for
Hmm.
sure. For sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, any other injuries that you see? So pole work, anything else that kind of comes up as a more common issue?
I mean, I guess with like the ridden horses, a lot of it is just like the chronic repetitive
The
strain
wear and
thing,
tear. Yeah,
wear and tear, and certain maybe riding styles might, make this happen a little bit more so than others. But yeah, chronic strain, on the pelvis and the neck, and that'll show up in the ways that we need to, treat the SI joints, and I would say front limb, shoulder, that's oftentimes like secondary things to what's going on, again, in the front end or the back end. Yeah, so like that neck and shoulder often kind of gets caught in the middle and in that compensation pattern. Yeah, it's interesting putting hands on a horse that hasn't been under saddle.
I was going to say,
at
what are the
all,
differences that
actually.
you see?
Yeah.
Because, the things that were jumping to mind were spinal for me, like whether it be kissing
Hmm.
spine or, different things that are occurring in large part with ridden horses, more so than others.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I had one the other day, a really sweet broodmare, standard bred broodmare. So she'd been, um, I think, raced lightly, but not under saddle, obviously, like in harness, and then had a few babies. And so I was working on her because she'd had some like foaling trauma, some pelvic stuff going on. But then it's interesting because even like, yeah, her spine, like her, thoracic spine felt really good. Her shoulders, like that upper scapula that often gets like that scapulothoracic junction that often is getting hammered with tree points. Like we don't have any resistance there. Like it's so interesting to feel that with horses that haven't been ridden at all. Um, and I would say probably, yeah, like the neck for horses that, are often kind of breaking at that C2, C3 point and, not actually, not actually in self-carriage and bending at that point in their neck. We find a lot of dysfunction there. And
Hmm.
so oftentimes like that'll feel way different in a horse that's not, yeah, been ridden for many years at least.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
those are
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, the first things that come to mind for sure.
So I wanted to chat a little bit while we're together here on horsekeeping because I'm very curious about some of the intersections that you see with your work and horsekeeping. I know you've written a little bit about this in terms of supporting horses with their horsekeeping for specifically feeling good in their bodies. What would
Mhm.
you say for you is like, I'm not going to say the ideal horsekeeping because I think everybody's kind of got to work with the space that they're in and like we all have different things that we're working with. But what are some of the key things in the horsekeeping that you see directly translating to horses that are happier in their body, horses that are have more freedom of expression, of health?
Honestly, probably movement, like number one.
Number one.
I don't know. Is it tied? I don't know. Like between like 24/7 forage or as close as you can get and movement. It's such like a close tie, I think, right? Like
Well,
if we
and
can
they create each other, right? Like,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, yeah, as much as we can try and avoid gut issues with our horses, the better. So
yeah,
slow feeding if we can with appropriate forage. And then as much movement as you can do in your space and with your time with your horse, um, I think makes the the most hugest difference. Like, um, and I don't know if this is the same in humans because I don't work on humans, but when you're feeling a horse that, maybe has been standing in a stall or a small pen for most of the day and they get pulled out and I go to work on them and everything just feels a little stagnant. Like the tissue
yep,
just
the
feels
congestion.
a little stagnant. Everything's a bit congested. Nothing, maybe the spine is moving, but it's not like a true, like it should feel like bamboo kind of thing, right? When you're testing and it's just, yeah. And just for the mental emotional aspect of it and just their baseline nervous system, like I just find the horses that are able to move more and have food available, 24/7 and aren't worried about these kinds of things and have the freedom to move and make choices. They're just so much more settled in their bodies. And then obviously it's easier to work on them like that, but then obviously like you just see like that sympathetic nervous system isn't firing nearly as much usually, right? Um,
Yep.
and if they do have some little things going on in their body, I mean, so much of the time, well, time and movement is key for, you know, 98% of the issues that we have, probably. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I don't know about you, but a lot of my work is just like moving the body, oscillating the body, opening
totally.
things up. Like, yeah, it's super interesting to work with that kind of more what it calls like what I think of as like a systemic congestion. And you can feel it. It's like, oh, this body hasn't been moving. Like nearly
Mhm.
enough for what it needs and wants, right?
Mhm.
And that the way that that contributes to health and well-being is just, yeah, bar none.
Yeah,
Like
the
those sorts of
vitality
people, I'm
is
like, you
yeah.
got to move. You got to, like, I
Yeah.
need you walking. I need you moving because the treatment just is not as effective oftentimes if that's not a part of that
That too. Yeah, if the
being's
body's
world, right?
yeah, if it's definitely helpful if it can be in more in a receiving state for sure,
Yeah.
right? Um, yeah, so that's huge. Like anything you can do to get more movement in when you're not there and when you're with your horse, quality movement, even if it's just walking. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. For
huge.
sure.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
curious because one of the things for me over the last years has been sort of developing my herd, and now there's four here. It's super interesting to watch like how much more they move, even with adding one more horse, because it's
Mhm.
like their herd dynamics. It's like not that they're pushing each other around, but it's like they're just constantly in these
Mhm.
conversations about, oh, yeah, actually I want that hay
Communicating.
net
Yeah.
now, or I need, or we're gonna go do this, or right, like there's very different conversations happening even from the step up from 3 to 4. And it's really, really neat to kind of watch how they're self-maintaining in their body weight and their condition. Like I'm not working them really in any kind of hard way, and yet they and they're not needing a lot of body work and their bodies feel comfortable and happy. And it's like, okay, yeah, like I think we're really onto something here. This settled herd dynamic where there's a lot of movement built in, a lot of conversations, a lot of sort of that those emotional needs. So I'm watching now with four. It's so cool because they'll pair off and like, oh, we like to groom like this, or we like to nap like this, or
Mhm.
not to tell everybody to go out and buy 4 horses. That's not what we're saying. But I am noticing these extra benefits of a herd dynamic. What do you
Yeah.
see in terms of where your work overlaps with these aspects of horse keeping?
Well, I do agree with like the herd and the movement thing. Like it's been, I have currently, well, I have two of my own, but I have five total right now on the track. And I don't think I'd ever want less than four because, like you said, like it's just that kind of like magic number where they're just moving a little bit more and like there's a bit more interaction and, everything kind of flows. Like they can pair off or there's like usually they go in like a three and a two. Um,
Totally.
yeah, and everything, they just seem a lot more settled, like just very happy in their little herd like that. But yeah, I think I definitely feel the same. Like it is a lot easier for them to self-maintain and self-regulate when they have those needs being met. Um, and yeah, like for everything, like everything in the body and the gut and the feet and you know, feeling
Yeah.
safe in their herd and just everything combined.
They
Like,
get to rest more, I find. Like it's been
yes,
really interesting
that's
to watch the napping
hmm
ratios go up with one
yeah,
more added.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's something I bring up with clients sometimes too is I mean, obviously herd dynamics if they can, and otherwise like at least, help them feel as safe as possible and give them like a really fluffy, comfy bed to actually lie down and sleep
Totally.
on because I feel like those little things sometimes get missed as well. Um, just in general of horse keeping and creating a safe, comfy place for them to rest.
Yeah. Yeah, we brought in
But
sand a few weeks ago, and it has been a very popular area for napping and
yes.
peeing, which is annoying, but
Oh, I know. I know. My sand pit is definitely like a bit of a litter box, but they love it.
they sure do. And I often, even in my track course, I tell people like if you can, like even if you're boarding, work with your stable manager if possible and be like,
hmm
can I bring in extra footing? Can I bring in sand? Can I make a bed? Can I change,
hmm
can I add more hay nets in our paddock? Like these sorts of
Yeah.
things really make a huge difference. They add more movement, more choice, and that then where, your horse is getting hopefully the rest, a little bit more opportunity
Yeah.
for the rest that they're needing as well. Because
Hmm.
I don't know about you, but when I was working with horses, I would just see so many sleep deprived horses. Is that still something
Hmm.
that's happening quite a bit?
I would say so, yeah. Even if it's not maybe like drastic sleep deprivation, but definitely, yeah. Like they're
Yeah.
just, always, especially the ones like in a busier environment or the ones that go showing a lot and that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. And the rest, I mean, obviously the body's going to heal way easier if they're rested or able to rest. And um, yeah, everything is just a lot more simple and easier if we're meeting those needs. And
I want to ask you a bit of a controversial question, and we'll
sure.
we'll see how this goes. But it is something that I've written on before, and this is around what your opinion is on when a horse should be bearing weight on their spine, in terms of being
Mm-hmm.
ridden for any kind of, not just like hopping up and down, but like being ridden a bit, more. What's
Regular
your
writing, yeah.
ideal for how old they are?
I mean, I'm probably gonna be in the minority still, probably similar to you, but like my young mare, she's just turning 5, and I won't be actually riding her until probably next year when she's 6. So like I've done some groundwork and I've like sat on her for like 30 seconds. That's it, like up and down. I would love that if
Yeah.
more people started, slowing down in that regard. Yeah, yeah. And I think it's something I've always kind of believed in that the longer we can wait, the better. Even
Yeah.
before I fully knew that the spine was, doesn't actually fuse until like at least 6, 7, 8. I mean, some horses for quite a long time, they're still developing and growing. And when I go work on young horses too, like it's amazing how much they're changing in a year or even like a few months. And um, I just think like how cool if the body didn't have to deal with the extra stress of all this weight on them and the whatever else we're doing with them while we're riding, but just had the time to grow and stabilize and balance. Like yeah, like my filly, I mean she's pretty naturally balanced to begin with, I would say, but I mean like it's just insane like the amount that she's changed from like 2 when I got her to now, and watching her move around. And even now, like she's just coming 5, and her canter is like so different this year. And I'm like, so many people struggle with these babies, riding them and trying to get elope and this and that, and thinking that the body worker, the saddle, or the farrier is going to help get them balanced. And I'm like, they need time to grow and to find balance and to learn how to use their bodies. And the jaw is such a huge part of that too, right? Like there's so much change happening with their teeth at this point. And uh, yeah, so I'm definitely in the camp that the longer you can wait, the more patient you can be, I think is better. And I think you'll find it way easier too.
Yeah, because we also here can talk about brain development, right? Like,
Oh, for sure.
I'm
Yeah.
always amazed when someone's like, I rode my 2-year-old. I'm like,
Like
number
how?
one, I'm trying not to judge you here. But number
Yeah.
two, it's like they can't even really think about
Right?
these sorts of things at
Yeah.
this age. And I'll often, thankfully, I don't hear this very often, but people will, oh, they were just so cool and whatever, and they're just so chill. I'm like, that's because they're like going, what is happening right now? Like they're,
Yeah. Or you got like a really cool horse, but it doesn't make it maybe okay.
yeah, exactly. So this
Yeah, like
sense
the
of like
maturity
the
is yeah.
maturity needing to come on board as well as the body, to a
Hmm.
place where, yeah, they're actually able to uh, be with us and support us in the ways that,
Hmm.
and vice versa, right?
Hmm.
There's a capacity and and the regulation, emotional nervous system regulation, and all these pieces. And they're literally, their bony structure is able to handle the load as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, I was
yeah,
gonna say that like the brain capacity is huge and because yeah, a lot changes in a few years.
yeah,
Like anyone that has young horses can attest to that, how much things change and yeah, and their ability to regulate and yeah, I mean, I think, the breeding to make very um, agreeable horses by nature is, probably maybe not helping us in that regard of not starting young horses, but with these minds that are just like incredible.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would love to see that hopefully change at some point in the future. I don't know if it will.
The end of the day for me, it came down to like, I want to have this partner for the rest of their days and have them be healthy. And that is hard to
Mhm.
do when they've been started really young because their body will start to break down.
Yeah, yeah. And I know people will kind of argue that and this and that and whatever studies, but I think it just makes sense,
Yeah.
honestly, yeah,
Yeah. And when I'm
if you
seeing
can be
horses
patient.
that are getting joint injections at 3 years old, I'm like, okay.
Oh my gosh, I
It's a
know.
whole other Pandora's box to open, but it does make me mad.
It makes me a little, yeah,
Yeah.
bonkers, and
Yeah.
maybe I will lose some followers for this, but I totally agree. Like, you should, yeah, like, no, if you're, injecting or trying to keep them sound at that age, there's something that's gone very wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to back that train up a little bit. And
Hmm.
yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, thank you for going down that controversial-ish rabbit hole with me. I think it's super important to talk about because, even if one horse has a different trajectory because of our conversation, I think that's a win. So yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would say, and two, if anyone is in the um, South Carolina area, to go to the bone room that the ladies
Ah,
have there,
yes,
because
yes.
that was also incredible when I was there a couple of years ago, and just to see all the skeletons and all the different pathologies and malformations and yeah, so if you want to see like kissing spine in detail and all the things that can go wrong, um, I think in large part to these horses being started so young and all the racehorses, that kind of thing, that was super eye-opening too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
the
It is
bones don't
on
lie.
my list to go there for certain.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, you won't regret
So,
it.
so important. And to do a dissection. I haven't done a dissection yet. So that's
Hmm.
another thing on my
Also
list.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Incredible. Well, thank you so much for the conversation today, Allie. It's been wonderful.
you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's
You're welcome. You did it. Your
been
first
fun.
podcast.
Yes, I can check that off now. Maybe it'll be easier next time.
Absolutely. Well, let us know how people get in touch with you if they want to book a session or ask a question.
Yeah,
Hmm.
for sure. So I'm on Facebook under Triple V Therapy, and my website is triplevtherapy.com. And I'm also on Instagram under Triple V Equine. Yeah,
Awesome.
and you can shoot me a message anytime. I travel a lot, so not just in my area, but around the province a bit. So yeah,
Thank you so much, Allie. I really, really appreciate this chat today.
yeah, thank you.
Thanks to everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time for more interesting episodes. Talk to you soon. Bye for now. Have you had a chance to check out Outside the Box Equine yet? I hope you pop over and explore the page outsidetheboxequine.com where you'll find all my online courses as well as Nicole Jory's Hoof Care Fundamentals course, which is getting rave reviews. If you've ever wanted to learn about applied kinesiology and applying it to animals, that is also the place to go for my kinetic communication online course. This is a course format that I've been teaching for almost 20 years, and it's been popular with hundreds of folks and helped folks to learn all about applied kinesiology and how to use it as a communication tool with their horses and animals. So head over, check it out. Love to know what you think. All right, have a great day. Bye for now.